Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this last but best session at the Tech Talk stage. I promise you, I have a wonderful, wonderful array of panelists here, and we are here to talk about buyer behaviors in event technology. I'm Cecilia Lavin, and I have been the host of this stage for the last 2 days, and I'm very pleased to moderate this last panel as well. Just as an FYI, if someone wants to ask any questions, we can take some live at the end, but also you can join us via this link, which is a web browser based, and you can then submit questions there as well, and I'll keep an eye out for those that we can look at the end. So without further ado, as I said, we're here to talk about event tech buyer behaviors. It's a panel hosted by ILEA, which is the International Live Events Association, who is an association partner of Event Tech Live. But without further ado, I want to introduce the panel. So I want you actually to introduce yourself. I don't want to talk about you. You should talk about yourself. So let's start with you, RJ. I'll tell them your name at least. So.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is RJ Crowder-Schaefer. I am the head of technology, event technology at Bloomberg. I oversee a team that not only manages the platforms that we use to execute our events, but also the event technicians that are associated with the actual production and execution of those events too.
Anika? Sorry.
Hi, so I'm Annika Red. So I have my own company called Annika Red Events. It's me. So I'm an event consultant, so I work with a lot of clients finding out the right tech that will work for them, and I run those events. I also work for event tech firms, so I kind of double-edged. I kind of know both sides of the coin, and I'm really excited for this panel.
Great. Lisa?
I am the owner of Electroline Marketing. We are an event planning and production company. I also own Your Event Marketplace, which is an online marketplace directory for the events world. And I'm also the executive director of the Northwest Event Show in Seattle, Washington.
And what else? What else? Any more? No?
I'm bored. I don't know. I just do a lot.
Christian?
The cost saving. We have only 2 microphones to share. So. Yeah, Christian is my name. Christian Seidenstücker, founder and CEO of Joke Event. One of the most relevant event production companies in Germany. We have 6 offices in Germany, 120 people employed, and at the end, working globally. And I have the honor, and my hobby is being president of ILEA, International Live Event Association, for the European chapter. And if my association calls me, for sure, I have to be here.
So as you can tell by this lovely panel, it's very diverse. RJ, you are based over in the States, right? Anika is here in the UK, Lisa is over in the States, and Christian is in Germany. So we have a very, that's the reason why I put together this panel, to give you a very diverse view of buyers' behaviors. And all of you are event tech buyers, or deal directly, obviously, with the corporates who buy event technology. And that's why we're here to talk about this today. So before I jump into my first question, obviously, as you all know, over the last couple of years, we've gone through a huge change in event technology, right? And a lot of developments have happened, which is obviously positive, right? We've driven technology to the next level, where it wasn't before, and much quicker than we could have imagined. But it's also proposed a lot of challenges, right? Because people are feeling overwhelmed by the amount of technology. Like, look around here, there's, probably 20 companies trying to do the same thing, right? So, what we really want to get to the bottom of here is, what are our challenges? How are we going to overcome them? But also, what can we look at to the future? So I'm going to start off with the first question, and it is, what were your key challenges in buying technology pre-pandemic? Annika, you started when we had a pre-discussion, so feel free to go ahead.
Of course. So for me, kind of the biggest thing was cost. I think I had the idea of having webinars, online events, but the thing is, everybody wants in person, everyone wants networking, and to them actually putting the outlay of actually spending money on some event tech felt like it was too much of a jump to actually go ahead and put it and implement it. Whereas now, 2 years later, when the pandemic hit, actually we all need it and we're all using it in our everyday lives. So I think that was the biggest thing, and actually changing that perception in people's heads that online can work. It doesn't have to be in person. You don't have to fly attendees or speakers across the world. It can actually be online.
So obviously what we were saying, the virtual and the hybrid options were second thought, whilst now and I would probably like to pass this on to Lisa, is because you have a lot of opinions about hybrid. Because we said that, you can't just go back to in-person events. Like, we all love them, and they're great for building relationships, but you have to have a online sort of presence in one way or another. Not with all events, but with certain things, right? And Lisa, what's your thoughts on this?
So pre-pandemic, people would say, hey, we're having a hybrid event. And what they really meant was we're having this live event and we might be live streaming some content. Like it was an afterthought. And we spent a lot of time trying to educate people of what a hybrid really was. Post-pandemic, we are seeing a lot of people going back to live, and there's a lot of companies that just want to go back to live. And what we're trying to educate them with is they're leaving 30 to 40% of their audience off of that market if they go live only. We are seeing, at least in the US, we are seeing 60% in person, 40% online. So they're losing a huge market if they don't go hybrid, and they have to go true hybrid, right? It's true events. We have to plan for that experience for those remote attendees. So there's a lot of education that's involved with it.
And that brings me on to another good question. I'm going to direct this probably at RJ, because we had a good discussion about this, because hybrid and some event technologies can seem overwhelming when it comes to the costs. Like, we talk a lot about price, and we know our cost for everything is rising at the moment. So how is that, what's happening at Bloomberg in terms of considering budgets, etc.?
Well, I think that when we look at technologies and what platforms we're going to onboard, we typically will bring in our procurement team and work to think strategically about, okay, how often are we going to use this? Is it a one-off? Is it company-wide? Is it specific to just one region? And really lean on the experts to kind of make those negotiations with the platforms to try and kind of drive the cost into a favorable position as possible for us. On the flip side, I think showing, for us, I was just talking about on the other stage, this project that we worked on called the Digital Control Rooms, which is quite expensive if you look at it. I won't say the number here, obviously, but it is essentially replacing the need for us to spend 20 to 30K per event for those events that need high-level production. So when you start to look at those savings across 100, 250, 500 events, it starts to justify that. So, the ability to think about your program holistically, where the technology fits in, and then also framing the potential cost in the grand scheme of things and any savings that you might have otherwise.
So I think that then means that some buyers think short term, whilst they should be looking at it, can I look at this long term? Christian, what are you seeing from your clients in regards to sort of the cost elements of it? Is that a challenge? Is that something that is hindering them implementing the right technology?
On the one hand, yes, because beneath the cost, we had also the problem, especially in the German market, to get the availability of the technology. So because there was a huge demand starting from, let's say, end of March, where everyone who postponed his live events into the summer season, let's say, and we had clients that say, okay, for sure, I have to do this kind of event. So, okay, cost a second issue, let's say. First issue was how to stage this event, because the invitation already set, and the complete environmental system changed. Normally it was a market like this, you plan an event maybe in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, no problem to organize it because we have enough, let's say, resources on the market. And even though what we have seen in Germany, the biggest problem and challenge what we have, that we have a loss of well-educated staff. So let's say technicians. And there was a survey saying that in Germany, the technical companies and providers had a loss of up to 40% of their staff. So, but now it's changing again, because as I said, now we have the first big wave done, let's say. Now people switching back to the more virtual and hybrid events. And now the cost issue, it's coming to that question, how can we do this much more clever, let's say.
And do you think, because like timeframes is actually an issue that's coming up here as well, as that's a challenge, we are reacting a lot later, I think. We're seeing that both from a client perspective and then also, but does that mean that hinders us taking these long-term decisions to some extent? Because if you are under time pressure from your client to deliver this event, say in 3-4 months time, whatever it might be, and you're like, I need this technology, but I'm not going to have the time to go through a full-on review process, so you're making quick decisions. Is that something I know you're more in a strategic role, but
Not always. Not
Okay.
always. No, I think my approach, or I guess the approach from the Bloomberg side, is really like, if something comes up that we need, we do it. We spend the money, we get it done, but we learn from that.
Lovely place to be, right?
One of the benefits, but we learn from that and start to ask questions around that next time. So we noticed, 4 or 5 months ago, that we were getting a lot of very last minute requests to stream events from one certain business unit. And this wasn't just like in New York, it was like in the south of France, an event that we're doing there, and all these different places. And it was really expensive for us to add it on 4 days before the event. So from that, I was like, okay, like, you obviously have the budget and you're fine spending the money, but let me ask a question, like, can we just assume you're gonna need this? Because I can cut this cost down by 80% if you give me 2 weeks notice or a month.
Exactly. And Anika, what are you seeing sort of from your clients? Because you obviously work with a lot of large, Fortune 500 companies. What are you seeing in terms of that time frame and the challenges it proposes there?
I think it's completely right in terms of RJ saying that it's very short-sighted. They're only looking 2 or 3 months in advance and not really thinking about what could happen. I know when I'm doing the COVID pandemic, it was kind of like either virtual or it was in person. They didn't really think of the hybrid element, but actually I think it's an education piece. As you know, I'm kind of like gold dust because I'm on both sides of the coin. I'm both an event manager and also work for event tech. So I can have that conversation and actually educate my clients and say, put that infrastructure in place now, early, about a year in advance, and have it ready. So if we need to switch, we can. So the biggest thing is education and actually more collaboration between event tech firms and clients to ensure that we're ready for anything.
So nicely put on until my next sort of question there. I didn't even have to think about that. Collaboration. And this, Christian, this was something you brought up a lot in our pre-event call, is, and it's come up a lot around the different content here as well and relating to integrations, are we collaborative enough in the event tech industry to support the users and support you as buyers to really provide that seamless journey?
Yeah, honestly, the last 2 years were more characterized through the surviving, let's say, for many companies. And I think we as event producer are often in the sandwich position, let's say, that our client, presses us to get best quote, best quality. And on the other hand, we have the technology companies which say, hey, come on, guys, we had 2 years of losses or whatever, so we cannot do that in that way anymore. And I think, like we did it before for huge productions, for example, in the US, we shipped a lot of material to the US because this was sometimes much cheaper, including shipping costs. And now we do not have the time anymore to ship something because the material which is in the container is useless during that time period. And I think such formats like here is good to get to know to each other, because our business is based always on trust. It's the client trusts you, and you trust me that we find the best solution, and therefore you will always be sure also they have the right suppliers, let's say, and therefore I think we need this kind of exchange, and not only here on this let's say stage, even though we have to find more formats where we get to know each other much better. And I think this would be a real advantage, even though in the perspective of cost saving, if we have really, let's say, a global, let's say, exchange of material, of people, of staffing, and then it's easy to say, oh, no worries, okay, due to the fact we have an upcoming topic in a company, and especially if you're working for the top 500, also this communication changed. No? Normally you set the point what you want to communicate. Now you have often to react, and then you don't have the time. If there's something, crisis or whatever happens, then you cannot say, sorry, guys, we need minimum 6 or 8 weeks before we can start our event. And therefore, let's focus more on the opportunities and how we do that. And therefore, we need also, I think, to meet in person because, this is one of the most important things, the personal trust.
I keep on saying that actually meeting in person is about building the relationship, but you can now carry on the relationships online. Whilst before, if you didn't meet someone in person, you were never gonna like do business with them, right? You know, so it's completely changed the way that we actually interact and behave as well. But RJ, I want to come back on the point around the integrations to you, because you mentioned that Bloomberg looks for providers with good core services, but then provides a flexible approach to sort of integrate with your processes and your system. So I'm assuming that means you work with quite a lot of different technology sort of, and you provide them into a system flow. Could you tell us a bit why you're looking for that approach?
Yeah, I think it goes down to really kind of our desire to collect data and be able to action that data. That's pretty much why we do events for the most part. And at a baseline, we have a requirement to use platforms, use technologies that are well established and have passed certain security protocols. Otherwise, they're just not going to be onboarded. So that typically goes hand in hand with the ability to have kind of out-of-the-box integrations that can be customized to our need. But Bloomberg has kind of our core product, which is the Bloomberg Terminal. It's a driving force at the company, obviously, but anything that we do from an events perspective, we have to account for the client experience on the terminal. So we can have a web experience that a non-Bloomberg Terminal user might use, but we also need to have the client who can go in, log in through SSO, for example, access and view the content on the terminal, have it look and feel really impressive and great, and also very Bloomberg, which those two do go hand in hand, just in a unique way, and have that experience and all the data collected align across both the terminal side and the web side. And so it's important for us to make sure that we have platforms that have a track record of being able to build integrations, oftentimes through kind of your standard protocols in that sense, but be flexible and willing, even if it costs a little bit of money, to work with us on specifically what we're going to need.
And that brings on another really interesting point, data. It keeps on obviously being brought up here that someone has said to me once that data is now equally as valuable as water. That's what we do, events, that's what we need to base everything on. But there's obviously challenges with data as well because of, privacy policies, GDPR, a lot of these things. People are afraid the security of their data. Cookies policies are changing. Lisa, is this something you see that's being a challenge from your clients as well? Because you obviously focus on the marketing end of things as well.
Yeah, and we have a lot of clients who are Fortune 500, Fortune 100. We deal a lot with the medical field as well. So there's some inherent, restrictions and challenges there as well. But we make sure that we are working with them to look at what data we are allowed to collect. We are very careful about letting people opt out of that data so that we are meeting PCI compliance, GDPR, any other acronym that we want to throw out there. But it's a challenge, right? Because data is going to tell us whether our event was truly successful, because we have to know what our goal was to know what that ROI is, but we also have to have their permissions to collect it. So we spend a lot of time working with our clients to make sure that we're collecting the data that they need, but also giving the attendees the option to control their data at the same time. And a lot of that comes back to the right software. Some of the platforms do it extremely well. Some of them could do it a little bit better, but it just depends on the software that we're using and how easy that is for us.
I was told this horror story by a client of mine about 6 months ago that they had hosted an event in a platform and then they found their data being sold online because the platform had basically said they own the data. So they hadn't looked into the contract rather than actually the client owning the data. And I was horrified. And it's things like that you need to be super careful. But I also think it's the technology provider's responsibility to be transparent about these things as well, right? And as you said, it's all about trust. I want to go back a little bit around the sort of, the hybrid elements. Because we mentioned that obviously, like, it's all about engagement, right? It's all about interacting. It's about remembering experiences. Anika, what challenges are you seeing from your clients in regards to hosting these hybrid events and really provide that engagement and interaction?
I think a lot of it is clients don't know who is behind that screen. They don't know who the attendees are. They don't know if they're a stay-at-home mum that've got kids running around behind them, or they've got dogs. They don't know if there's somebody who actually is an extrovert and needs to be in the office and needs to be around people to get the energy. I think for me, it's actually, I keep pushing back to clients and saying, who are your attendees? Is it an internal conference? Is it external? What is your persona of those people? Just like you do for an in-person event, why are you not doing the same data research for somebody that is online? What we've done, some for previous clients I've worked with, I've actually asked a survey about 3 or 4 months before, saying, what would you prefer? How much percentage would you prefer to be in a room with the people, and would you prefer to be at home? And I think that would then help technology providers make sure that we tailor the engagement to them. Some of them love gamification. Some of them absolutely hate it, as I'm sure you're aware. But that's because we don't actually find out who it is behind that screen. And I think, again, the onus has been the client to say, we will make sure we tailor for you if you tell us what you want from your side.
And it's something we had on another talk here yesterday, is sometimes you need to create that FOMO effect, right? About, like, even if you're delivering a virtual event, it's like, you can only, we talked about the Super Bowl. I think Super Bowl is a really good example of how many people tune in. But, it's about, because you want to be a part of it. You want to be a part of that conversation. But saying that, when I did a poll in the audience, actually, when I asked about events and attendance of virtual events, only about 25% of the audience in here yesterday said that they actually look at virtual content live for events. But everyone is watching on demand. So again, this brings on your point, Lisa, right? Like, you're going to lose a part of the audience if you're not really focusing on that. So what do you focus on, and what technologies do you use when you do sort of on demand?
A lot of different ones. So again, it's going to depend on the event, but we definitely make sure that whatever systems we are utilizing do give us the ability to do on demand. We also do a lot of segmentation with our audiences. So we'll allow different content for different people depending on what their different attributes are, whether we're dealing with a corporation where maybe we can only have certain content appear for certain groups, sales and marketing, things like that. But we make sure to continue to release that on-demand content, because one of the beauties with virtual events is convenience, right? You asked that question yesterday. I was one of the people that did not raise my hand that I actually watched virtual events live, because I'm usually too busy to watch virtual events live. But I can come back and say, okay, this piece of content's really interesting to me. I want to watch that. This piece of content's not. I'm going to just avoid it, or I'll get back to it, which we all know what that means, right? Like, I have emails I'm going to get back to too, and they're in my inbox for like a year and a half. But it's just making sure that you can actually have a platform that can deliver that content, gate the content if needed, and provide that experience for your attendees.
I want to move on to talk about positives. I feel like we've focused a lot on the challenges, right? But there's a lot of positives around event technology. But just before I do that, if you have any questions, put the panel on the spot, guys. This is your chance. Submit them online, or I'll ask you obviously live later on. But we got 15 minutes left. So positives, and RJ, I want to start with you, because one of the things that you mentioned about the digital studio that you have produced, I asked you a question before this, and I said, would this have been possible to do before the pandemic? And you said no. So technology has actually driven us to a lot of great places as well, where we are today, and can connect with people from all over the world. What sort of some of the positives like you saw come from sort of that evolution that's now helped you build your processes and your systems and event technologies you use today?
Yeah, I guess it's just general buy-in from the company, the stakeholders that I work with on their willingness to kind of shift their budget from wholly in person to components of non-in-person. And I think it's just generally kind of being more open and willing to like try new things out, you know, which in some ways can be very annoying when you get 10 emails a week saying, hey, have you heard of this platform? And you're just like, please stop emailing me. Like, you know, it takes me 15 months to onboard a new platform. So even if we had this conversation, you know, but on the positive side, it is the ability to say, hey, we're going to spend X amount of money and here's what we're going to get from that. And the really exciting thing for me is being able to do that and then actually show the worth of it, you know, and find exciting new use cases where we didn't really anticipate them to be. And so I think, I mean, that's been a positive one for us. And I think we've seen that hold even with kind of the move back to in-person. There have been some questions around, do we still need this? Do we still need an event technology team at Bloomberg if we're going back to in-person? And that a large part of that is on me to then continue to advocate the fact that event technology doesn't equal virtual events.
Absolutely. That's the thing is, right, we often get stuck on just delivering the streaming and things like that. I had a chat with Adam Parry, obviously one of the co-founders of Event Tech Live, about 30 minutes ago. And I asked him, how many pieces of Event Tech has it taken for you to deliver Event Tech Live? And it's 20 plus. It's 20 plus different event technologies to produce this event. And even like just sitting here, we got loads of event tech here, right? It doesn't just need to be the platform. So great. That's a great point. And I think we've also become a bit more forgiving. Like from the pandemic, I think if something happens, if something doesn't work, I feel like we're a bit nicer about it.
Who's we?
Well, I just think, maybe not your... Is people more forgiving? Actually, that's a good question.
It depends on the audience. So we have audiences that they get it, right? Like stuff happens, streams end. You know, I was telling somebody a story the other day. This event last week, it was a 12,000 person hybrid. And just before one of our sessions, some lovely person decided to roll a cart over our Cat 5 and it killed our stream. Like, you know, the poor AV guys who are, you know, sitting there just struggling to get this going, right? And then we have other audiences that the stream goes down and the chat is evil. I mean, it's terrifying what they put in there and they're like, this is horrible and I want my money back. And it's like, really? Like, just give me 2 minutes. 2 minutes and we're recording it. So we have a backup. It's okay. So it just depends on the audience as to how forgiving they are. But the technology is great, right? The technology just keeps getting better, keeps getting faster. You look at how everybody innovated in the first, 2 months? I mean, just look at all the changes Zoom did, everybody else did. All these platforms in events done amazing things in the last couple of years. It's been fun to watch from our perspective. But yeah, they're not always forgiving.
Well, you know what? You're probably right about that. I'll take back that statement because yesterday morning the Wi-Fi didn't work and I was fuming because I couldn't get online. I needed my notes for the stage, right? So, but that is like now that's a fundamental, right? It's a basic need, like, and without the Wi-Fi we can't deliver events, right? And, you know, these are some of the fundamentals we're not really thinking about, right? And actually, I love Excel, sorry. I get really pissed off with venues. Like, you know, I've been to 25 different trade shows this year. Only one venue globally has provided free, like, super fast and accessible Wi-Fi. 1 out of 25 globally. So I think that's probably a fundamental. So let's finish off before we sort of look if there's any questions. What is the one thing you as a buyer or as a buyer medium you would like to see the event technology industry change to make your lives easier moving forward? RJ, start with.
I'll go last.
Okay, all right. Okay, Anika, let's start with you.
For me, it's transparency and honesty, complete, utterly. I'm very lucky that I've seen both sides of the coin, but I know there's a lot of kind of tech speak or certain acronyms that are used to bluff event managers and event planners. Actually, we're all there for the same reason. We want to make sure the attendees have a fantastic time on that event, or whatever it is that we're providing. So have that transparency from the start, because it'll build that relationship, and you never know, that can then build a much bigger, buyer power from both sides, basically.
Okay, Lisa?
For me, it's integrations. We have a pretty good tech stack that we like to use on events, and some of those integrations are easier than others. So, I'm not a developer, so it's easy for me to say, well, that should just be easy, right? And they usually shudder at me. But for me, it's definitely integrations.
I say that all the time when I speak to clients. I'm like, oh yeah, that integration will probably be really easy. And I was like, oh, maybe I should take that back. My CTO might kill me. But Christian, go on.
Yeah, it's nearly the same experience what we have. So I would, if I could have a wish to all the tech suppliers, don't tell us what everything is possible. It might be better saying what might be not so possible, or how do we have to design it, or how do we have to find another way using this kind of platform. I think this makes our life much more easier. And I think even though if you have to accept maybe to get one job, maybe not, but it's a good investment for the future. Because I would rely more on partners which are honest to me, saying, Christian, this idea, great, but it's not that
maybe
good.
Maybe not so easy.
Not so easy. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about maybe find another way or another solution for that. And that would be great for the future.
I think it comes back to Anika's point, right? Trust, transparency. Yep. All right, RJ.
Yeah, I think for me, to your point earlier, like you look around, there's all these different technologies that are here on site. And, I think generally speaking, I would like to see an increase in innovation and kind of pushing the boundaries on what's possible, and technologies in the event space looking outside of the event space for inspiration. There's really no reason, like if you go on, like if you're familiar with Twitch, for example, you go on Twitch and the tools that these content creators have from their home studios on their PCs, albeit they've spent a lot of money on those setups, but is really great. And that doesn't translate to the experience that you have on some of these event platforms. So I think innovation, like I hope that kind of continues to evolve over the next few years, even if we see things change a little bit and maybe return somewhat back to kind of pre-COVID.
And I think that's important to remember as well. It's thinking about the end user. What do they want? Not just what you as a developer or a tech company want to develop. It's more like, you have to think about the users. So we're talking about innovation, we're talking about integrations, we're talking about trust, transparency. And I think that's a good point. That's what we need to do as event tech suppliers, because you are the buyers. You are the ones who will actually pay the money to make sure we have a job. So there is one question online, and then we can go around the room and see if there's some questions. It's sort of, what event tech trends do you see as a game changer in the nearest future that you guys will buy as well, I guess? Who wants to have a go at this? Lisa, go on.
It's terrifying. For us, the biggest question that we are always trying to answer is how can we have that engagement with our remote audiences more, right? Especially when we're doing hybrid. And how can we do that easier? So we spend a lot of time with our AV teams working at ways to have kind of those two-way conversations. And we talk about things that we think are easy, right? When somebody looks at us and says, well, we want people to answer questions on the floor, but we also want them to answer questions online, and we want them to be able to see each other, and we want them to be able to hear each other. Right? That's easy, right? And we're like, sure, we can do it, but it's not easy, right? So I think for us is anything that brings in that engagement piece for the remote attendees, that creates that unique experience. Some of what you're talking about as well in terms of things that we're seeing in places like Twitch and things like that, just different ways to bring in that engagement piece with those remote attendees. If it was something that was super powerful, super clean, and really provided value for those remote attendees, we would spend the money in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I guess from my side, we've been focusing a lot on accessibility, and I think that's going to be a big one, and has been a big one, but I think even more so moving forward. And platforms need to focus on that. I think the panel that was on the main stage earlier, one of the speakers was saying that it can't just be a checkbox, like something that you add on to an event. It needs to be really a part of like the core aspect of that event, from the planning perspective, from the technology perspective, all of that. And I think platforms are starting to slowly wake up to that.
And I think that's a good point. Like pre-pandemic, when you talked about accessibility, it was physical accessibility, right, of venues. Now it's become the visible accessibilities, I would say. But we had a great discussion. There's been a new project launched called the Neuro project. New project. So it's about neurodiversity and how you use that in events, because it's invisible, sort of disabilities that platforms people often forget about. And it's an interesting point that I think that you're absolutely right. That's definitely where we need to see a further push. And I love the fact that the closed captioning here on the stage, Eventec Live, it's great. And I know there's been some translations into Spanish as well. But again, there's other sort of accessibility needs that needs to be addressed and brought to the table a bit more, I think. What about controversial question here? Metaverse. Yay, nay, hate it, love it, can't wait?
I can't wait. I think that we're years off from something that's can be actually fully integrated into an event portfolio. I personally am a little tired of seeing kind of the like mock 3D environments in the digital space. It has never, in my mind, felt like it's actually brought the event to life. Yeah. And I think that right now there's more you can do with like the 2D in a creative way than you can that 3D. But I'm excited to see where it comes, or where it goes, I guess. Yeah.
Well, for me, when the metaverse conversation started as well, I actually hadn't realized that we've been using metaverse for quite a long time, but more in video gaming. Like video gaming, it's been in existence for ages, but as you said, it needs to have that purpose of bringing it to life, right? Any other thoughts on the metaverse? Anika, I can see you take the mic there.
So I definitely agree. It's a very exciting time, but again, it goes to why. What is the reasoning for that event? What is the objective of that event? So I did do an event on the metaverse back in March for 2,500 attendees. It was a hackathon. Very weird to have little people creating little booths, basically creating a booth like this, different booths, but you could go up and talk to them. And these people were remote workers around the world. They weren't able to be in the same office. And actually they loved it because it meant that they weren't missing out on something another department or another region was doing. They could still see what they were up to. So I think definitely I agree. It's a very exciting time. That was more like a video game kind of thing rather than the immersive aspect. But really make sure we think about the why and the how and ask those questions to our clients. What does the end user want? And then ensure that we tailor it, because it'll make it even more exciting that we've matched exactly what they want.
Because I'm guessing not all events are going to exist in the metaverse. That's the thing, right? There's going to be some that it's suited for, some that it's not. Lisa, Christian, any thoughts? No?
Yeah, I was going to say, I look forward to it, but I wouldn't use it now.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's going to depend on the audience. We had a recent event. They had 2,200 posters. We did all the posters on the platform. We did not physically have them on the floor. And everybody was like, where are the posters, right? So there are different audiences that have different expectations, and we have to be able to meet them where they are.
And honestly, it depends also on us, that we not follow only the trend. Okay, we have to do it in metaverse. Yes, we do. So really as a consultant, it's important really to analyze what are the goals, what is the intention, what kind of behavior change you would like to have. And honestly, there we know metaverse is not the solution for everything. So, and I think it's the meeting design, it's consultancy, so to see what kind of technology or which kind of format, live format, hybrid or only online, I think should we do, how we should design. Maybe we should also talk also with some creatives as well from to see how to find solutions for the future, how it should be designed for the end client, or let's see, for the user, because I think this is the most important thing. It's great to say, hey, we had our first big metaverse event, but the success was a little bit like that because no one followed. And I think this FOMO design, this is a thing where we should really focus on.
Yeah, great. Do we have any questions in the room? Oh, great. Well, I'll come over. You know, this is what I've been doing for 2 days. So here we go.
Great stuff. Thank you. Yeah, really enjoying this. I guess it's a bit metaverse related. Is there any examples where people have run live events and then had a kind of 24/7 kind of place that people go in the virtual world, kind of between the live events? So that's the idea. You know, your exhibit essentially runs all the time, except you occasionally have live events as well. Is anyone any examples of that, or is that just too bit out there?
It doesn't look like you have any examples of that. I must say, I did, and I'm come back on stage here now. I did come across that as a concept. It was a company in Asia who was trying to do that, to set up an exhibition online to be available 24/7. The issue was, if you think as an exhibitor's point of view, is I have to be accessible in the platform 24/7. Because right then they didn't have any meeting scheduling capabilities, which was just ridiculous, right? You know, I can't sit there and be available 24/7. So I think it's been, I don't know why it hasn't taken off. I just don't know. Maybe it just doesn't seem to work. But, or is it, do you mean in the metaverse world? Because I haven't seen that either. Yeah.
Well, actually, I guess it doesn't need to be even that sophisticated. It's more like all the content's there, you know, all the talks, and that. It doesn't need to be virtual people walking around a virtual exhibit. It needs to be all the content that's there, and it's all integrated with the actual live event. And, you know, I know some of that does take place, but it just seems to be, you know, quite an exciting area for people who are time short and all that. I mean, you did touch on that point about.
Yeah, I was waiting to make sure you weren't going to go. So what we've seen with exhibitors trying to do anything virtual is there's a lot of exhibitor education that's required. We have done events where we have had virtual booths at the same time as the event. We've done events where we had virtual booths the day after an event. And trying to even get them to load content is a struggle. So you have to work really, really, really closely with your exhibitors and provide some really structured education for them as to exactly what that involves so that they follow through, because otherwise there's absolutely no ROI on it for them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've done a few events where it's one environment that we've done handovers across time zones. So it might be obviously around the same theme, could even be similar topics, but it's going to be specific to that region or country or whatever it might be. But again, it requires full service support there. It's not just kind of self-service and pick it up, but it can supplement a larger environment that has, you know, different documentation or other activations within that.
It's user adaptability. Is that a word? I'm not English, sorry. I make up words sometimes. But it's all about if the user will be able to, you know, actually use it and willing to do so. So anyway, we've run out of time. Thank you, Christian, Lisa, Anika, RJ. Love this panel. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you who's joined us. If you've got any other questions, I'm sure, you know, you can ask them afterwards. So thank you. And that's the end of the content here at the Tech Talk stage. It's a bit sad, but just to mention one last time, it's been sponsored by InEvent, and thank you all. I'll see you next year.